Welcome to episode 8 of The Equity Partner. And I have a pleasure of joining me today, Ivory Chandler. Ivory is a graduate of St. Louis University School of Law and also has a 20-plus year career in sports law. He previously owned a sports management firm, as well as he currently consults with and advises athletic programs, coaches, and also athletes with educational and sports matters. I'm appreciative of you joining today, Ivory, and I look forward to the conversation.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate this opportunity.
Well, let's get started a little bit. I mean, the Equity Partner is kind of designed to share information, to share your background, learn a little bit more about where you came from and how you got to where you are now. So tell me a little bit about your personal background and where you're from.
Sure. I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan, the best place that there is to be born and raised. Growing up, I worked with my dad each summer. My dad owned an asphalt paving company, so my summers were always spent working with him. I was doing grown man work, working out there in the sun, laying asphalt, pretty much anything that you see that goes up and down the highways, any type of piece of heavy equipment, rollers, backhoes, pavers, bulldozers, dump trucks, front end loaders, anything, I can run it. And so those are the kind of things that I was doing early on. Also, I loved sports. And it was working with my dad that also caused me to kind of understand that, once I got older, I wanted to do something that I was going to be able to use my brain as opposed to, working as far as labor. So those are the kind of things that molded me. Obviously, raised in the church. I'm thankful for that background. My older sisters, they were impactful in my life as well as other family members. And those are the things that, kind of got me to where I am today.
Great. I mean, with you working with your father, I mean, what did that necessarily teach you from an entrepreneurial standpoint growing up?
It was very impactful. It was the type of thing that showed me that working for yourself is something that for me was the best way to go. And it's why I knew that once I hopefully became a sports agent and worked in sports and had my sports management company, it was something that I wanted to have on my own because I saw how comforting it was to be able to call your own shots, to be able to devise your own direction, to be able to come up with your own plan, to be able to assist others by when you're employing them, and how it was to be able to help people. I remember my dad when we were growing up in the church, all the churches, well, not all the churches, but the Black churches in Flint, Michigan, they knew my dad. Our family was well known. And so when they needed their parking lots done, they would always call on my dad. And I always saw how he was very much, interested in helping them. He would not, in other words, he would have them simply pay for the asphalt and the labor, and he would put their parking lots in. So I saw how you could give back and help by owning your own company. Whereas when you work for someone else, you have to go to them and see if you can get them on board, and that may or may not happen. So that was very impactful growing up. Sure.
Great. So you grew up, you worked for your dad, and then you went into the direction of law. And so was that your initial aspiration, or what were you initially attracted to that led you into sports law?
Well, from the time I could take 2 steps and fall down, I knew I wanted to go to law school, and I wanted to use my law degree to represent athletes and do something with respect to sports management. Mm-hmm. I always loved sports. I mean, growing up, I was a standout athlete in a variety of sports. Ultimately, I focused on football. And so I wanted to make sure that I was in a position to help others achieve their goal. My focus was that when I had my sports management company, I wanted to be able to teach the people that I represented how to use sports as a vehicle to accomplish their goals. Most people look at sports and athletics and they want to be a professional athletes and they want to go into their particular sport. They envision themselves being a professional athlete. And the reality is most likely that's not going to happen. And so I really wanted to make sure that because again, I didn't just represent professional athletes. There are coaches and other people. There are parents who come to me looking for insight on how to help their kids or whatever. And I try to really make them understand that it should, for the most part, you want to make sure that it's a means to an end.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So having that athletic background and also being interested in law, you just combine 2 passions to pursue. And so talk a little bit about, just you running a sports management company and just that experience and what you learned during that experience, and then also currently with what you're doing now?
Well, first of all, I learned a lot. I learned that I didn't know what I was doing, and that was a good thing. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Had I known what I didn't know at the time, would I have done it? Absolutely, but it would have just made me a little bit more hesitant. When you start a sports management company, I had no clue what it would take. For instance, I thought that because I had gone to law school, I had played athletics myself, and I have my background or whatever, I would be able to walk up to a particular athlete and his parents and simply tell them who I was and kind of talk to them about what I'd be able to offer, and they would be enamored and encouraged and excited, and they would sign with me. And that's not the case at all. When you are a sports agent and trying to start a sports management company, what you don't realize is how many agents are out there, how many people are coming at these athletes, and you are just one of a gazillion, literally. And so they have so many opportunities. And so you have to be able to offer so much more than just a professional service. When you represent professional athletes or student athletes that have exhausted their amateur eligibility, that is, they're through with college and now they're going to the next level, there's a period between that time that they've exhausted their amateur eligibility and the time that they're going to actually sign with their particular pro team. And it's during that time that an agent really has to show what type of services they'll be able to offer, because it's not on the back end when you're doing the contract. By way of an example, let's say that if you have a football athlete and he comes out of college, and let's say he plays his last game, let's say in December or January, and then you sign him because that's the only time that he can't sign with you until when he's done. So now there's about 4 or 5 months there's about 3 months, let's say January, February, March, April before he's drafted. But even then it's May, June, probably July. It's right before training camp, usually before he'll sign his deal. So you have a player for about 6 or 7 months that you're dealing with him. And that's the kind of services that you have to talk to him about, what you'll be able to offer during that time that'll get him to sign. The contract is on the back end, and really it's not a small piece, but it's not necessarily what they're focused on hearing what you can offer. So when you sign the client in, let's say, January, you have to talk to them about being able to offer them services for them to be able to prepare for, say, the combine. You have to say, hey, I've got an opportunity for you to go out to Florida or Arizona or Texas and train with this particular company so that we can prepare you for the combine. And then also, I know you have your parents, and maybe you have a young lady who you're planning on marrying. Maybe you already have a kid. So we have to talk about how we're going to have financial assistance for you during these 6 months so that you don't have to worry about them and you can just focus on training and all of these different things. And then you have to travel yourself. If they're playing in a bowl game, you want to make sure that you're at the bowl game to show your support and offer them insight, because at these bowl games, they're talking to the pro scouts who are there. And when they go to the combine, you're at the combine. And then after the combine, when you're at their personal workouts back at their colleges, you're there and you're setting them up. There's so many things that you need to do, and you're providing services to this players during this window. And those are the types of things that you don't know about. You just think, hey, I'm going to be an agent, I'm going to sign this guy, and then when he gets drafted and does his deal in July or whatever, I'll be there to do that. No, there's the 6 or 7 month period, and you have to be able to provide these services. And that takes a lot of money and a lot of connections, and you don't even know those things, so you struggle.
Yeah, I recently listened to it was either a podcast or something recently, an interview where agents were talking about just the expense that you have to bear on the front end of even courting an athlete.
Right.
And you might not even win that athlete as your client. And so it sounds like you learned some of the same things during that experience. And how long did you act as an agent? And outside of what you learned, what did you gain from that experience as well as manager?
I was an agent for, I'm sorry. I was an agent for about 10 years. And, it was a great experience for me, because it was in doing the things that I did in my own sports management company and representing the athletes and coaches and the connections that I made with pro scouts, going to different schools and different colleges and meeting the coaches there and into the athletic departments. All of those things helped me to develop the contacts and the experiences and the competencies and the knowledge and all of those things that comprise my comprehensive knowledge base that I use now to now go back and provide the consultations to those athletic departments and those coaches and whether it be high school or private high school or school districts or all the things that I do now. It was those experiences coming up in my sports management company that gave me the knowledge and the competencies that I use today.
That you use today. So if I were a young aspiring agent, what's one thing you would tell me as a young aspiring agent to do, or what would be your best advice to that person aspiring to be an agent?
If you have the aptitude, I would definitely suggest that you go to law school. Law school teaches you how to gain competence in basically anything that you're going to need to be able to advise somebody in. It's what you're taught to do. We are taught that if you're going to be able to advise in this particular area, this particular discipline, how you go in and you examine it, you research it, you become competent in it so that you can talk to somebody and advise them, because that's what they're hiring you for. And as an agent, that's exactly what you're doing. You're hiring somebody to be a fiduciary, to represent your best interests, to think selflessly about themselves and put you first, to do a contract for you. But not only that, to look out for your best interests for you. You're going to have a wife, kids, family, maybe own a business. You're going to need to be able to be competent about other things other than the contract. They might want to own a company. They obviously are going to talk to you about maybe when they buy their house or do other things. And so that gives you kind of a versatile, comprehensive expertise so that you'll be able to do that. And then with respect for the company, I mean, really the way I did it, I didn't know when I went out and did it on my own. But if you can find a company where you can intern and see what an agent does and see how they're running their company, so that if and when you go out on your own, you have that experience and maybe you don't stumble and fall the way that someone like I did, that would be very helpful. Also make sure that you have a class in there, whether it's you studied in undergrad as a major or whatever. Take an English course. You make sure you want to know how to write and you want to know how to speak and communicate. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think those are great tips and great advice to share. What now? Talk a little bit about your consulting and advisory position that you have today, and it seems as if your sports management, sports law, past experience has led you into what you're doing today.
That's exactly right. Again, the past 25 years have put me in a position to have a comprehensive knowledge base. When I started off, there's a lot of things you have to research and look up and learn about when you're offering consultations or advice, or whether it be for your athletes or athletic department or whatever. And now, because I've done it so long, I'm blessed to have a lot of information between my ears. And so what I do today is I use that. For example, there are athletic departments, there are parents, there are private high schools, there are school districts, and they have issues. And it's not always issues. They might just need a strategy. Mm-hmm. I think the best way to kind of give you an example of what I do would be this, is that if you think about a FBS school or one of the big time athletic programs like, say, a Florida State or a Notre Dame or something like that, in their athletic departments, they have hundreds of employees. So that if they have a compliance issue, they have someone with probably JD behind their name to handle that compliance issue, or to educate them as far as compliance so that they don't have issues. If they need a marketing strategy, they have somebody maybe with the MBA or somebody who's been schooled or educated in that discipline. If they need to increase enrollment or tuition or ticket issues or just whatever, financing, business operations, they have professionals they were trained in that and educated, and that's their sole focus. Now, you contrast that with, let's say, the person that's at an NAIA school or a junior college or Division II. Well, the person handling compliance at that school also is the softball coach. The person handling compliance at the NAIA school is also the basketball coach. The one doing ticketing or operations is the volleyball. So that when they have an issue or they need a strategy or they have something they need to consult about, they call me. And that's the difference. And so then I talk to them about things like fundraising is always a big issue. Everybody is pretty much looking for a way that they can, come up with some funds at this point. especially now with COVID and everything that's going on. Another thing that I'll get a call about is they'll say, hey, we want to increase enrollment here. So we want athletics to collaborate with the admissions department so that we can increase enrollment. What are some of the things that they can do? And I'll talk to them about maybe adding sports or maybe a club sport or just different things like that. I might get a call about, hey, we're here in Nebraska at this particular school that's rural in Nebraska, and we want to not only recruit but retain diversity because we're having an issue in doing that. And so I'll talk to them about the things that they'll need to do that. It might be a private high school. It might be a school district. I had a couple of weeks ago, the third largest school district in a particular state. I talked to them. They wanted to prepare for COVID and know some of the things that they might want to be able to address. So these are some of the things that I do. And yes, my 25 years being out here has helped me to have the comprehensive knowledge base to do that.
You talked about several topics that I think are probably top of mind for everybody, including COVID. With COVID being a topic of choice today, I mean, how is it impacting, programs, athletic programs coming back, and how are you advising programs, when they look at bringing sports back? Because I think there's a ton of risk that's associated with it, but that's also a funnel for a lot of the funding for those schools. And so what's your thoughts on that?
Well, when people talk to you about COVID, and it's not also, a lot of times people won't think about it like you talk about the school district, but it's also parents that I get calling me, should I send my kid back? Most kids, about 10% right now, they're not sure whether or not they would go back if the school is open or play, regardless, because they're concerned. But from a school district or an athletic department perspective, I mean, that's the first type of decision and kind of assessment I tell them they want to make. Do you have the ability to provide a safe environment for your student athletes? And if you don't, you should not bring them back, because first and foremost, that's the paramount concern and kind of focus for your athletic department. Some of the things that I tell them also is I say, you ought to gather your parents, and kind of talk to them about, say, hey, this is what's going on. No matter what happened, we're going to do the best that we can to provide you a safe environment. And these are the steps that we're going to take to do that. But at the end of the day, just know there's no guarantees, and we don't want anything to happen. So unlike any other year, really sit down with your kid, your husband, or your think tank or your decision makers and decide if you want to play this year. I even talk to school districts and say, hey, you might want to send out a letter, and it's not something to try to make them waive liability or something like that, but just a letter kind of saying, hey, this year, this is what's going on. You're familiar, and these are the things that we're going to do. We're going to work with you or what have you. But, there's a risk out there, and just understand that. But yeah, when you bring them back in general, the things that you want to do is you want to phase it in. You want to bring people back to campus, and then you want to quarantine them if they're coming from out of state. If you're a school district, you want to say, hey, we don't quarantine, just like when you get a physical, when you go back to high school, I say, go to the doctor and get checked out. And as part of your physical, obviously, if you can, take a COVID test. You have to maintain social distancing. You want to clean the weights. So while someone is lifting, somebody needs to be a little bit further away, and then you have to clean the weights and all of these things. So there's so many things that you want to do. And I'm just scratching the surface right now.
Yeah, it's I think it's a lot to think about, and I can see, I mean, the conversations that I have as a parent, but also thinking about, what the athletic programs are going to do as we approach a lot of sports, new leagues kind of coming back and the leagues coming back. So it'll be interesting. So tell me a little bit about who's helped you along the way to get to the point of where you are today.
Of course, there's so many people that I owe a debt that I could never pay to that I can't mention them, but just a few of those people today would be, again, growing up in Flint, Michigan, the first person that offered me an opportunity to understand what it would be like to be in a law office or to go to law school was Linda S. Berker. She's an attorney in Davison, Michigan, which is a suburb of Flint. In addition to her, Fulton B. Eaglin, he's an attorney in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Harvard educated. And these are two attorneys that when I was undergrad, they allowed me to work in their law offices and kind of see what it would be like to do that. And while doing so, they also kind of gave me information about what it's going to be like for me to be able to make it in law school. While working for Fulton Eaglin in Ann Arbor one summer, I also went to an event that was where Dr. Janetta Cole, who was at that time the president of Spelman College, was speaking, and she spoke to me. So I want to acknowledge her because even though I met her one time, the words that she spoke to me, and also she wrote something to me that was so impactful. She's a very encouraging woman. I'll never forget that. And then when I get to law school, just the final two people in law school, Leland Ware was my a professor, and he was my mentor in law school from an academic standpoint to help me get through and make it where otherwise I don't think that I would have. I want to acknowledge him. And then finally, Robert Lattenville was my sports law professor. He's a renowned sports law attorney there for Spencer Fane in St. Louis, Missouri. One of the things that he does as far as representing athletes in various things as far as sport law, annually, he's the person for USA Today that writes their annual kind of examination of athletic director and coaches, their salaries and kind of a salary analysis, and he does that for them every year. So these are the people that have helped me along the way and have mentored me, and I appreciate them for that.
Yeah, I think that highlights the importance of relationships as well as people that inspire you, that are doing something that you inspired to do. It sounds like you had a ton of inspiring people that you were surrounded by that allows you to be where you are today.
Absolutely.
Yep. What discuss some best practices kind of for athletes, families, programs that they should always consider. I know we talked about just with COVID, but what else should people, athletes in general, but also programs and families be thinking through as they transition into different sports programs or colleges and universities?
Well, I'll talk about athletes first. If you're an athlete, you want to get someone who you feel comfortable with, someone that after you and whoever it is that your family sit down with, or whoever it is that's going to assist you in making that choice, really not only feel comfortable with them, but really look at what they're talking to you about offering you in terms of assistance. I know that when I was representing athletes, and it was just something that I saw, and it was frustrating at times, is that, and particularly those athletes that look like you and I, they were listening for what it was that you were offering initially. In other words, maybe some type of, again, in an appropriate way, offering assistance financially and other things like that, because that's what they needed right then and there. So they would be susceptible to, say, an agent who would come in saying, hey, I've got this amount of money for you to sign with me, or maybe I can get this vehicle or do these kinds of things. But I would encourage them to really listen and hear that the person is someone who has your best interest in mind, and is someone who has a long-term plan for you. Somebody who, in addition to his services, has someone who's going to take care of your taxes for you, who's going to have a financial planner available for you, someone who's going to make sure that you're taken care of well beyond your football years, as opposed to someone saying that, hey, right here and right now, because maybe you have a need, there's something that I can do for you right now that really doesn't speak to my representation of you. It's just maybe fulfilling your need or what you desire right now. And you're just a young man, 20 or 21 years old. You don't even maybe recognize what's in your best interest or what's going to benefit you. So have someone who's strong and is going to be able to tell you no, and just say, hey, this is what's best for you. And maybe you won't sign with me, but this is what I'm offering. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say with respect for a student athlete, someone who's looking to sign an agent. With respect to parents, I get parents, like I say, who call and they're looking for a situation, especially now with COVID. Let's say that they have a kid who wants to play in college, and this year they're not able to be out on the circuit, the summer circuit, whether it's football or basketball, where coaches would be able to see them playing their summer travel teams or whatever. Well, the first thing I know is that most likely your kid is not a D1 athlete, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if he was, they're going to find you. So you need some assistance. And they say, so then what do I do? My kid wants to play. And I'll say, well, understand that D2, D3, NAIA, junior colleges, these are all opportunities. When you go to these schools, they don't have full scholarships. And then I explain to them what a scholarship is. Most people think that a scholarship is something that's guaranteed and that it's always going to be a full tuition and things of this nature. And that's more than likely not the case. I tell them about how they need to market themselves. You need to put together, I say, approach it just like a job search. If you and I, or the parent, I talk to the parent, say, if you were looking for a job, you'd put together a resume. You want people to know about you and you reach out to them. So I say, put together a bio for the kid, get some film together and send it out. But when you're approaching these schools, I say, don't just talk about athletics. You need to talk about what it is that you want to be in life, your education, so that when you go to the school and you introduce yourself, you say, hey, I think that I would like to play football. I've researched your program, but more importantly, I know about the engineering program there, and I would like to be an engineer. And so that's going to be a means to an end. I think I can help you on your football field, but at the same time, I like the engineering program or whatever your educational aspiration is, and talk to them like that. Then I talk to them about other sports entities that they don't know about. Everybody knows about the NCAA, but not a lot of people know about, say, the United States Collegiate Athletic Association, or the National Association for Intercollegiate Athletics, or the National Christian College Athletic Association, all these different other organizations that offer membership. So there's so many things that I talk to them about in these things, in these aspects, to offer people, insight and advice.
Yeah, that's I think those are great great best practices and things to look into. And I don't think people looking into all the other aspects of college athletics. And I was fortunate. I played Division II basketball, and again, just like you said, between Division II, Division III, and NAIA schools. I mean, there's tons of offerings that can allow you to get a free education. And also play the sport you love. And I think it's important for parents to know as much as they possibly can.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to mention, what would you say your biggest accomplishment was to date? What are things that you've accomplished in your career? What would you highlight as some of the most important?
Well, again, my initial kind of focus and my dream was to have my own sports management company. And I was blessed to do that. It was hard, and I would not have been able to do it. Not only and I didn't do it on my own. Obviously, I had the support of my parents, but spouse at the time, and you just can't do it without that type of support. So that was my biggest accomplishment, because it was my dream and I was able to do it. And a lot of people have dreams, and unfortunately they never realize them, but I was able to do that. And so that is my biggest accomplishment. And it's because with that platform and with that opportunity, I was able to help other people to achieve their goals. There are student athletes that were looking to become professional athletes, and through my sports management company and my assistance, I was able to help them to accomplish that. There were coaches that were trying to advance their careers. They needed mentoring, or they wanted me to look over their contracts or help them. I was able to do that. And the many other people and departments and personnel that I was able to help, that's invaluable. And that's something where I look at the people and the assistance that I was able to offer. And that's something that it's quantifiable, that you can say, hey, you made a difference in your company and the things that you did. So that's a great achievement.
I would agree. I think you pushing yourself to achieve that initial goal of running a sports management company, and then being a servant leader, being able to serve, now the athletic programs, administrators, coaches. I think those are great accomplishments. Mm-hmm. So we are running close to time, and so what I normally like to do is, at the end, I like to do a speed round of 5 questions that you kind of answer the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. And it's just to really get to know a little bit about you, but also just to do something fun at the end. So
sounds like a winner.
If you're ready, I'll start off. So what's your favorite book?
It would be, I want to say it was a self-help book. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. It's the athletic director book. It was called Athletic Director, the Examination Perspective. And what that is, it examines being an athletic director. And the reason that I reviewed that and also read it was because I would like to transition into becoming an athletic director at some point.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Dead Again.
Okay. Favorite place to travel?
It's a place that I haven't been. I would like to go to Paris.
Okay.
But a place that I have been that's in the state, when I go to Boulder, Colorado, I do like Boulder.
Okay. First car?
1989 Buick Skylark.
All right. And your favorite hobby outside of law?
Well, I run daily. Is that a hobby, or do I need to say something else?
Running is definitely a good hobby.
Okay. So I run daily and I love it.
Oh, you do? Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, look, listen, I want to thank you for taking the time out and kind of sharing some of your background, your experiences, and I'm hopeful that it'll be helpful to some other inspired leader or future leader that we have. And I thank you for just being a partner in their future and participating in this discussion today. Is there any last things you want to share before we end?
No, Jeff, I just want to thank you. I mean, this is an opportunity and a privilege for me. I appreciate you offering me this kind of platform, this opportunity. I hope that the things that I say can help someone. If that's the case, then, it's been a benefit for me to be here. And so again, I thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you again, Ivory. You can hold on for 1 second. I appreciate you joining me today.